I still remember the moment my grandfather's lawyer looked around the room and said, "This will change everything." Everyone was smiling, because they already knew they were getting millions. My sister sat there confident. My parents looked proud. Even my cousins were whispering about what they were going to buy. And me? I already knew I was getting nothing. That's what they had been telling me my whole life, that I was the disappointment. So when my name wasn't called at first, no one was surprised. Not even me. But then, the lawyer paused, looked directly at me, and said something that made the entire room go silent. What do you think he said? And why did everyone suddenly stop smiling? The room was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence where everyone is waiting for something big to happen. We were all sitting around this long, polished table in my grandfather's lawyer's office. The kind of place that smells expensive, like old wood and power. My sister was sitting right across from me, dressed like she had already won. She kept checking her phone, probably texting her friends about how her life was about to change. My parents sat beside her, calm and confident, like they already knew how this was going to go. And honestly, they probably did, because in this family, things were always predictable. She was the golden child. I was the mistake. That's how it had always been. Even growing up, every achievement of mine was ignored, while her smallest wins were celebrated like headlines. So sitting there, waiting for the will to be read, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't excited either. I already knew my role in this story, the one who gets nothing. But what I didn't know was that my grandfather had been watching everything the whole time, and he had made a decision that no one in that room was ready for. The lawyer finally adjusted his glasses, opened the folder in front of him, and began reading. His voice was calm, professional, like this was just another normal day for him. But for everyone else in that room, this was everything. He started with small things first. Donations, properties, a few personal items. No one really cared about that part. Everyone was waiting for the real numbers. Then he said my sister's name. She straightened up immediately, trying to hide her excitement, but you could see it all over her face. "Your grandfather has left you $5 million. The room shifted. My mom smiled instantly. My dad nodded like this was exactly what he expected. My sister let out a quiet breath, like she had just confirmed something she always believed, that she deserved it. Then came my cousins. 2 million, 3 million. Everyone was getting something. Everyone, except me. And with every name that wasn't mine, I could feel the room slowly accepting it. No one even looked in my direction anymore. It was like I didn't exist, like I never did. And honestly, that part didn't even hurt, because I was used to it. But then, the lawyer turned a page, paused for a second, and the tone in his voice changed. The lawyer slowly looked up from the paper, and this time he wasn't just reading anymore. He was watching me. That alone felt strange, because up until that moment, no one in that room had even acknowledged I was there. Then he said my name. Not quickly, not casually. He said it slowly, like it actually mattered. And for the first time that day, every single person in the room turned to look at me. My sister's expression changed immediately. My dad frowned. My mom looked confused, almost uncomfortable, like something wasn't going according to plan. The lawyer cleared his throat and continued. While most of the estate has been distributed, he paused again. There is one final instruction. You could feel it in the air. Something was off. This wasn't part of what anyone expected. Then he reached into the folder and pulled out a separate envelope, different from the rest, sealed. And suddenly, the room that was full of confidence just minutes ago felt uncertain, even nervous. He looked straight at me again and said, "This is specifically for you." The lawyer placed the envelope on the table, and for a second no one moved. It just sat there, heavy, like whatever was inside it mattered more than everything that had just been read. He nodded toward me. "Go ahead." I reached for it slowly. I could feel everyone watching now. The same people who had ignored me minutes ago were suddenly paying very close attention. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No numbers, no amount, no check, just a message, handwritten, from my grandfather. My fingers tightened slightly as I started reading it. And within the first 2 lines, everything changed, because it didn't start like a normal will. It started like this: I know what they've been doing to you. My heart skipped. I kept reading. I've been watching for years, how they treated you, how they dismissed you, and how they assumed you would always stay quiet. The room was completely silent now. No one was smiling anymore. No one was confident anymore. And then came the line, the one that made my sister slowly sit back in her chair, and my dad's face turn pale. Which is why I made sure. Everything important is in your name. For a second, I didn't even understand what I had just read. Everything important. In my name? That didn't make sense. Not in this family. Not in this room. The lawyer didn't say anything. He just quietly reached for another folder and opened it. Then he looked around the table and spoke clearly. The remaining assets, including the main estate, all business holdings and property rights, he paused just long enough for it to sink in, have been legally transferred to him. Silence. Not the calm kind. The kind that hits after something breaks. My sister shook her head immediately. That's not possible. My dad leaned forward, his voice tighter now. There must be some mistake. But the lawyer didn't react. He just slid a set of documents across the table, directly toward me. Stamped, signed, final. And suddenly, everything they thought they owned, everything they were celebrating just minutes ago, wasn't really theirs. Not anymore. Because the truth was, the money they received, it was small compared to what had just been placed in my hands. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the invisible one in the room. They were. No one spoke for a few seconds, but you could feel the shift in the room. The same people who were smiling earlier were now sitting there, trying to process what just happened, like the ground had quietly moved beneath them. My sister leaned forward first, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "Okay, this is funny, but what does that actually mean?" The lawyer didn't answer her. He looked at me instead. That's when my dad stepped in, his tone calmer than before, but controlled in a way that felt rehearsed. He said, "Listen, whatever this is, we're still family. We can sort this out together." Together. That word sounded different now, because a few minutes ago, I wasn't even part of that family. My mom finally spoke, softer, almost careful, like she was choosing every word. "Your grandfather loved all of us. He wouldn't want things to become complicated. Complicated." What she really meant was out of their control. I looked around the table, and for the first time, I noticed something I had never seen before on their faces. Not confidence, not pride, uncertainty. They weren't talking to me like I was the problem anymore. They were talking to me like I had become the solution. And that was the part they didn't like. Because now, everything they had always taken for granted depended on me. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at them, really looked this time. The same faces I had spent years trying to impress were now waiting for my reaction. Like everything depended on what I said next. And maybe it did. My sister sat there quietly now. No confidence left, just tension. My dad tried to hold his composure, but you could see it slipping. My mom avoided my eyes completely. For years, I thought if I worked harder, proved myself, did everything right, things would change. That they would finally see me differently. But sitting there in that moment, I realized something much simpler. They never needed me to succeed. They needed me to stay small. Because as long as I was the disappointment, they never had to question themselves. I took a slow breath and placed the paper back on the table. Then I said something none of them were ready to hear. "Don't worry, I'm not here to take anything from you." For a second, relief flashed across their faces. Too quickly, because they misunderstood what I meant. I leaned back slightly and continued, "I'm just here to stop giving everything to you." And that was the moment it finally clicked for them. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about control. And for the first time in our entire history, They didn't have it. No one argued after that. No one raised their voice. Because deep down, they already understood what had changed. It wasn't just the money. It was the balance, the power, the dynamic they had controlled for years was gone. The lawyer quietly gathered the papers, and the room slowly started to empty. But the energy felt completely different from when we walked in. No excitement, no confidence, just silence and consequences. As I stood up to leave, I caught one last glance at them. For the first time in my life, they weren't looking at me like I was less than them. They were looking at me like I had something they couldn't reach anymore. And maybe that was the real inheritance my grandfather left me. Not just assets or property, but the freedom to walk away without needing their approval. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to, because some endings don't require words, just distance. And as I walked out of that office, I realized something. They didn't lose me that day. They just finally understood what it meant to never have me again. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you forgive them or walk away for good?